Agroeconomists in Addis Ababa acknowledge Nigeria's diversification agenda for food sufficiency.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we examine the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan, plus the Nigerian Sovereign Wealth Fund.
All right, now, as a response to the economic recession, the government of President Muhammadu Buhari on the 7th of March 2017 came up with the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan, ERGP, 2017 to 2020.
Now, besides seeking to get the economy out of recession, the Recovery and Growth Plan was also aimed at achieving sustained inclusive growth by tackling constraints to growth and leveraging the power of the private sector, allowing markets to function, and more importantly, promoting national cohesion and social inclusion.
Indeed, now the ERGP has three strategic objectives of restoring macroeconomic stability and economic diversification. Let's look at them. Building a globally competitive economy through investment in infrastructure and investing in the Nigerian people through programs on social inclusion, job creation, youth empowerment, and improved human capital.
Now, the plan received tremendous support from various sections of society, as indicated a ray of hope capable of paving the way for economic development and a return to stability if pursued faithfully.
But how faithful has the implementation of the ERGP been almost 1 year after? Now, what have been the gains and challenges? What is the sustainability of the component of some of the initiatives rolled out already? We will be having our guests that will appraise the ERGP on the program today.
Now, our second topic of conversation is on the Nigerian Sovereign Wealth Fund, which is being managed by the Nigerian Sovereign Investment Authority itself, created by an act of parliament in 2011 and, of course, became functional in 2012, even though its investments didn't kick off until 2013. Its primary function is to manage the reserves, the excess accounts arising from the sale of Nigeria's crude oil reserves.
Indeed, Kingsley. Now, the fund is also expected to contribute to economic development through building a savings base for Nigeria, enhancing the development of the nation's infrastructure and providing stabilization support in times of economic stress.
Now, at least as at September 2017, Nigeria's Sovereign Wealth Fund stood at some $2 billion. And as I said, this is under the management of the Nigerian Sovereign Investment Authority, which has already invested in key areas to try to enhance the value of the savings currently in the kitty.
Of course, Kingsley, apart from investing in internationally, the fund is also trying to expand by looking into other areas such as agriculture and asset management, among others.
All right, so one question to ask immediately is, what is the current status of Nigeria's Sovereign Wealth Fund? What are the challenges of actually managing the fund, and how has the fund been appreciating, in other words, growing? Are there also risk exposures to the investments of the funds?
All right, that's the outlook of our program today. Good Morning Nigeria, broadcast live here on NTA, that's Africa's largest TV network. I am Claire Adelabu Abdul Razak, and it's always a pleasure to have you join us on the program.
I'm Kingsley Osadola. I join Claire in also welcoming you to this edition of the program, reaching you as always on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. In the course of the program, we'll have our regular companion segments, including business, newspaper review, and others. In the meantime, we go over now to our colleague, Joy Osiago, to give us the morning news. Hi, Joy.
Good morning, Kingsley and Claire, and good morning to you out there. Now, the news. Attaining cultural, political, and regional unity of the North and creating a suitable platform for the region to attain a functional political alliance with the South was the focus of Northern elders and stakeholders as they converged on Abuja to discuss pressing national issues. Leader of the Northern Forum, leader of the North from all walks of life, called on elites of the region to stand up in unity.
Our unity and guard our identity as a region and evolve a strategy to achieve development.
Stakeholders were enjoined to change their profile and desist from paying lip services and double standards to ensure a functional northern region.
President Muhammadu Buhari has promised to consolidate on the gains recorded by the All Progressives Congress-led administration since 2015. He restated this through his senior special assistant on political matters, Gideon Zamani, during a mega rally to canvass support for his re-election. The rally was organized by APC Stakeholders Forum and the National Committee of Buhari Support Group in Ughelli, Delta State. Still on politics, Rivers State Saturday became the meeting point of the cream of Nigeria's politics as leaders from different political parties gathered in Port Harcourt to thank God for the victory of APC legislators from the state. Senate President Bukola Saraki and Governor of Rivers State and his counterpart from Imo State were present.
Of River State ahead of everything else. And we must all cool it down and work together.
I believe it stands a good chance of being the governor of the state, or being the flag bearer of the party.
All is set for digital switchover in Enugu later today by the Minister of Information and Culture, Lai Mohammed. The preparation for the airport-making event indicate that finishing touches are being put in place by staff of different divisions.
And those who are opportune to have the set-top boxes have been viewing from our platform.
The entire staff are excited to be on the same platform with other zonal centers that have, of course, has migrated. And you see the level of preparation, the engineers are here.
Agronomists and researchers have commended the steps being taken by President Muhammadu Buhari towards moving Nigeria out of food importing countries and pushing it to be self-sufficient in rice and wheat. Agronomists and government officials in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, who commended Nigeria, also indicated that Ethiopia is to ban importation of wheat in the next 24 months.
We have to be self-sufficient. We have the soil, we have the water, we have the labor, and the means why we import wheat, why we import rice. We have to prioritize our commodities.
The Nigerian Youth Parliament is advocating more youth empowerment programs that will harness the potential towards the socio-economic development of the nation. This was at an event organized to complement the efforts of the armed forces in tackling insecurity.
We also strongly, as a matter of urgency and necessity, advocate for massive and constant investment in sustainable youth development, as this remains the major panacea to arrest vices.
You complain that your mates in other climes become presidents, even at the age of 30. I want you to go back to their history and you'll find out that they already have requisite knowledge and experience to lead.
And that's the news for now. Good morning, Nigeria. We'll be back with Claire and Kingsley.
All right, welcome back. You're watching Good Morning Nigeria, first edition for this week. Let's talk business now. And this is very interesting. It says Britain to add Nigeria's Naira to list of accepted trade currencies. Just as IMF's Christine Lagarde says regulation should help prevent wide market swings. We now join Joy Uzo. She's our guide on business news.
Welcome to Business News. Managing Director of the International Monetary Fund has said that sharp swings in global financial markets in the past few days are not worrying. says economic growth is strong, but reforms are still needed to avert future crises. Christine Lagarde, speaking at a conference on global business and social trends in Dubai, said economies were also supported by available financing. This is her first public comments on market movements since the latest round of turmoil at the end of last week, when global stock markets were hit by wide fluctuations, with the U.S. benchmark S&P 500 tumbling 5.2%, its biggest weekly percentage drop since January 2016. The volatility was fueled by investors' worries about rising interest rates and potential inflation. Lagarde repeated an IMF forecast originally issued last month that the global economy would grow 3.9% this year and at the same pace in 2019, which she said was a good backdrop for needed reforms. She did not give details of the reforms she wanted to see, beyond saying authorities needed to move to regulation of activities, not entities. Meanwhile, the United Kingdom says the Naira will become one of 3 West African currencies that UK Export Finance has pre-approved for its program of funding transactions that promote trade with Britain. Britain voted in 2016 to leave the European Union, which has forced London to rethink its trade ties with the rest of the world. The United Kingdom and the EU struck an agreement in December that opened the way for talks on future trade ties. The British High Commissioner to Nigeria, Paul Arkwright, says this is a clear indication of how much value the UK places on its relationship with Nigeria. The statement said the UK will provide up to 85% of funding for projects containing at least 20% British content. Analysts welcomed the impact of the financing option on the local currency. However, they said it might increase Nigeria's liability as trades mature for settlement, and questioned the rate at which funds would be disbursed since local interest rates are in high double digits. And on prompt payment of dividends to shareholders, the Flour Mills of Nigeria PLC on Saturday emerged best company in the maiden edition of Dividend Payment Awards organized by Third Observers Nigeria Limited in Lagos. The company was given the Gold Award for regular payment of dividends to its shareholders spanning 36 years. In the Silver Award category, the winning companies are Total Nigeria PLC, Julius Berger Nigeria PLC, Berger Paints Nigeria PLC, and Guarantee Trust Bank PLC. The 4 companies were awarded silver for their consistency in paying dividends to their shareholders in the last 20 years. The Dividend Payment Award for Nigeria's listed companies, which is endorsed by the Nigerian Capital Market and the Securities and Exchange Commission, is intended to improve investments in the stock markets. Finally, Egypt is now one of Africa's largest oil and gas producers, the 5th largest oil producer behind Nigeria, Algeria, Angola, and Libya, and the latest crude oil refining capacity in Africa. Maintaining the highest rate of energy consumption in the continent, the country remains highly dependent on oil and gas resources in both downstream and upstream sources of production, leading to the emergence of interest from the government and the private sectors to invest in opportunities to meet energy demands domestically and develop prospects for exports. Challenges in the sector have arisen over the past few years, encouraging reforms in the petroleum and electricity sectors to create administrative and legislative restructuring to support a healthy marketplace for energy investments. That's it on Business News. My name is Joy Uzo. Many thanks for watching.
Thank you very much, Joy Uzo, for the business package. Next, we go to the front pages of some of today's newspapers to check out the headlines.
Let's welcome Bayo Atoyebe, who is already here in the studio to do the usual. Bayo, good morning, welcome.
Good morning, Claire.
Good weekend?
Yes, it is for us.
Kingsley,
good morning. I'm sure you enjoyed your weekend.
It was quiet. It was quiet.
Good morning, Nigeria.
It was a bit windy this morning during the Federal Capital Territory.
That's good.
Windy, yes. What's happening?
Dissipated the dust that is settling.
That's right. Let's take a look at the front pages of the papers. The lead stories are different, but you have related stories, otherwise scattered around in terms of headlines on the cover. Let's begin with the Authority newspaper. Authority newspaper has as its lead story with a kicker, cattle colony. have no powers over state lands, and that's attributed to President Muhammadu Buhari. Details of that story can be found on the front page with a jump to page 5. And then above the nameplate of the Authority newspaper, you have 4 other headlines. We won't use 2018 capital budget for 2019 elections. That's according to the federal government. John Shagaya dies in road accident. That's on 11. And reps probe Jonathan and Buhari over questionable waivers. That's on page 5. And federal government set to free 468 suspected Boko Haram members. That story is in greater detail on page 4. Now, also there on the front page, beside the photograph you find there on the front page of the Authority, herdsmen attack mobile policemen, burn van in Benue. And 150,000 policemen guard VIPs and unauthorized persons. That's on page 5. And Catholic Church not run on tithes. Bishop replies Governor Bello. That's on page 5. And then gunmen kill 4 palm wine tappers in Kaduna. That story is on page 2. Some of the stories I just read now, they're also on the front page of the Punch newspaper, even though the style is slightly different. The Punch, above the nameplate, it says, federal government won't divert capital budget into elections. That's attributed to the finance minister. And then you have others there, 2 earpieces there beside the nameplate. Ex-Minister Shagaya dies in auto crash, Buhari and ACF mourn. And exposed killer headsman, Sanusi tells Mieti Allah. And the lead story says 2019 presidency, restructuring, condition for alliance, southern groups tell northern elders. That's on page 2. And below the photographs that you have there on the front page, you have this same story on Governor Yaya Bello of Kogi State. Says, Luther Tights comment. Bello apologizes to Catholic bishops. That's on page 2.
All right,
Page
Kingsley.
3, rather, yes.
All right, Bayo, if it were to be economists, they would describe the pages of the papers this morning as on the southward trend. Because most of the stories are, just...
the economy.
Yes. All right, let's look at The Guardian.
What's southward about that?
Don't worry, I will explain to you later. The Guardian says airlines to save 11.6 billion naira yearly from removal of VAT and others. Special panel takes proposal to FEC. That's the lead story on the front page of The Guardian. And other stories, I think that's just the lead story. Bayo, you want to take up the review?
Yeah, let's talk about the human interest stories now. Deaths that occurred over the weekend. President Muhammadu Buhari was said to have buried 2 of his relations in Daura. He lost them, our condolences to them. Also, the Chief of Army Staff lost his father. His father, it will interest you, like son, like father, also served in the Second World War. He too was buried in Maiduguri. But the one that came as a shock to most persons in the nation is the death of Senator General John Shagaya, who died in an auto crash while returning from Langtan to Jos on Sunday. He was involved in an auto crash at a village called Ampe, and he suffered head injuries from which he didn't recover. It may be recalled that he was commissioned into the Nigerian Army in 1967. He served as in the 3rd Marine Commando. He also participated in the Civil War. In serving the nation, he was GOC 1 Division and also commander of the Joint Task Force of the ECOMOG. He was Minister of Internal Affairs and was a senator between 2007 and 2011. That's a very sad loss of a gentleman and officer. The worrying story that I find is a disease that has been described as brucellosis. That is said that about 95 butchers have contracted this disease in 3 local government areas in Bauchi State. It is said to be a contagion that is allegedly transmitted through consumption of unboiled milk, meat, blood, and infected animals. And it has a deception because it manifests with headache, sweating at night, and also fever. And if you are not careful, you could miss it for a different ailment. But however, they said it is a factor of poor hygiene, and victims may not be able to talk after a while, and it is also causes abortion in women. This has been described as the latest discovery there, and it is actually very prevalent in Bauchi State. The National Agency for Prohibition of Trafficking in Persons, NAPTIP, got a tip about a baby factory in Nyanya, very close to your MGR there, and the 38-year-old man was nabbed. They have recovered local herbs which the suspect was allegedly using to stimulate ovulation among persons. He was arrested after weeks of surveillance.
All right, you have other headlines?
Yes, I have a very disturbing story, Kingsley and Bayo. It's on the page 4 of Daily Sun. I just wish we can see that. It says, Center appeals to IGP over missing broadcaster. And as I was going through that report, let me quickly read out a part of it. It says the Idoma Biographical Center has called on the Inspector General of Police, Ibrahim Idris, to speedily unravel the circumstances surrounding the sudden disappearance of Ace television broadcaster, Dr. Nalegu Ode, from his Makurdi Benue State home since January 5, 2018.
Yes, Nalegu Ode was reported to have gone out in the morning on a walk, jogging exercise, and that was the last they saw of him. And it's been in the media since they announced his disappearance, and there seemed to have been no trace about it. The worrying thing is that it came about the period where you had this crisis around Makurdi Benue area. So it's very, very worrying, and up till now, he has not been found. The other positive story, however, is the 13 persons who were abducted by the insurgents who were released over the weekend. They include the 3 university lecturers who were involved in oil exploration in Borno State, and 10 women policemen who were in a convoy along Damboa Maiduguri Road. The president has expressed excitement about their release, and he has advised the Department of State Services to intensify negotiations, which was done through the International Committee of the Red Cross to see to the rescue of the 113 Chibok girls that are still unaccounted for.
Yes, so just before you take the editorial, please, there's a story again on the front page of Daily Sun. Police Service Commission raises the alarm. 150,000 policemen on unauthorized duty. 150,000 policemen on unauthorized duty.
And there's also information that about the population of about 300,000 police that we have, more than 50% are on aid to politicians' services. And the United Nations statistics recommendation is that we should have 1 policeman to 400 persons. And looking at our population, what we require is nothing less than 450,000 policemen. And the current population of about 300,000 policemen, more than half are on aid to politician services.
Well, not just politicians. I mean, you have them guarding all kinds of persons. And these persons, you know, according to my information, they pay for it. So that's part of what the police authorities themselves should try to resolve. Over the decades, this matter has been lingering. Yes. You find, you know, either the head of the police force or the head of the federal government will give a directive saying no more use of policemen as private guards, and so on and so forth, and everybody pays lip service to it, and before you know it again, you see policemen. These are policemen who have been recruited and been trained on at public expense, and are still being paid, you know, from the public purse, but they are being privatized, you know, by all kinds of persons who are busy doling out funds to them. I think it's one issue that we have to, the authorities will have to pursue. You cannot have at least 100,000 or 150,000. And yet we are complaining that, you know, when the country is under policed, of course, the new rave now is half-state police, and so on and so forth. So 150,000, what are they doing? Of course, some of them are attached to banks. A number of them are attached to politicians. Some of them are also attached to heads of parastatals. You see them, and some of them perform domestic or personal assistant functions, carrying bags and, you know, all kinds of things. They have warned them in the past.
Yes, there was a directive from the police high command that they should desist from carrying portable bags for the political persons they are attached to.
Who is chasing you? I mean, if you let's face it, Bayo. I mean, you headed the paracetamol. Did you have one?
No, I didn't.
This is incredible. And you need to read the details. Actually, it's on page 10. You need to read the details. Okay, Kingsley, let's quickly.
No, it's by the chairman of the Police Service Commission that the lack of funds XYZ. I think this is a matter that they have to address.
Even at the security meeting last week, a representative of the IG reiterated the same issue.
Same challenge, yes. All right, Bayo, let's take a look quickly at the editorial of the Punch newspaper.
Yes.
Editorial is on page 22, and the title is A Federal Workforce Restructuring That Works. And in part, the editorial says that the federal workforce is racked by fraud is evident in successive governments' endless winning of ghost workers from the system. But it also advises that any reform of the civil service that will work, call it workforce repositioning or agencies restructuring, must have a tripartite bearing: government, the legislature, and organized labor.
Well, the concerns here is about the population of the workforce of the civil service. And if you recall, in 2011 there was the revelation that there were about 263 statutory agencies, and there was an attempt to reduce them to 161. There were also 541 parastatals, which Orosai committee recommended a massive reduction. However, the NLC has also argued that although they talk about cost of the public service, actually the cost is not to the public servant, but political appointees own the substantial build of the cost in governance. The other concern, however, is also the apparent politicization of the public service.
Bayo, we have to end there. We really have to end there. We want to thank you. But we want to end on this very positive note. There's a picture story I'd like you to see. It's unscripted. You just need to take a look at it. It explains, it's on the inside page of page 4 of the Daily Sun. You see a man there. The caption says, "What a woman can do, a man can do it even better." Now you see, Bayo and Kingsley, what the man is doing is trying to tie the scarf of the woman. And you know, these days, tying of head scarf is an art.
Not only that, men are very dexterous in plaiting hair.
All right. That's how we end our newspaper review. Bayo, thank you.
Thank you, too.
And we'll see you tomorrow. All right, let's take a break now. We'll be right back. Right, let's focus our attention now on Sovereign Wealth Fund. In case you're wondering what this is all about, I advise you stay tuned as we take on Timothy Yusuf's background report to set the template for our discussion.
The Nigeria Sovereign Wealth Fund was established in 2012 to save the surplus income produced from Nigeria's excess oil reserves. These funds are managed by Nigeria Sovereign Investment Authority. The authority is expected to invest the savings gained on the difference between the budgeted and actual market prices for oil to earn returns that would benefit future generations of Nigerians. In doing this, it is expected to provide stabilization support to the Federation revenue in times of economic stress, invest in a diversified portfolio of growth investment to provide future savings, especially when hydrocarbon reserves are exhausted, and enhance the development of infrastructure, primarily through investment in domestic infrastructure projects that meet targeted financial returns. The fund was allocated an initial $1 billion as seed capital. Records show that Nigeria's Sovereign Wealth Fund, as at 2017, stood at $2 billion, with the investment agency seeking further growth through agriculture and the addition of asset management. The government's contribution stands at $1.5 billion, with the rest including funds owned by the institution and those managed for several government agencies. Under this administration, the National Economic Council approved the injection of a fresh $250 million capital into the Sovereign Wealth Fund sourced from the Excess Crude Account, ECA. The federal government's commitment is to increase its funding of the Sovereign Wealth Fund by 50%, committing an additional $500 million. As part of the authority's investment, it has revamped 11 fertilizer blending plants as part of the Buhari government initiative to boost farming output and reduce the economy's dependence on oil, which contributes to a third of government revenue. The project is reported to have so far created 50,000 jobs and saved the government 50 billion naira in would-be subsidies. What is the place of the fund in Nigeria's economy? How can the fund be managed to growth? Are there risk exposures? Find out as answers are provided on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you very much, Timothy Yusuf, for that background report. Now, joining us to discuss further on this issue is the CEO of the Nigerian Sovereign Investment Authority, who are the managers of the Sovereign Wealth Fund. The CEO, of course, is Mr. Uche Orji. Mr. Orji, pleasure to have you join us on the program.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
All right, Claire.
All right, Mr. Orji, it's good to have you on our program. And sometimes when we speak of some of these concepts, we seem to speak above, the understanding of the layman. So, to begin with, I'd like you to, in the interest of those watching now, to bring this down to reality. What do we mean when we talk about sovereign wealth fund?
Okay. Thank you very much. I think it's, I would like to assume it's well understood more than we probably assume. But when we talk about sovereign wealth fund, we talk about an investment entity that manages the wealth of a country. It's as simple as that. And what do you mean by wealth of the country? Over time, since the 50s and the 60s, and mostly in the 70s, various countries that are commodity-based, either they generate their revenue from crude oil or from solid minerals like diamond, in the case of Botswana, realize that commodity prices go up and come down. And it tends to mean that the economy, the underlying economy, become what you may describe as volatile. So when oil prices go up, you feel wealthy. When it goes down, you feel a little poorer. Now, how do you stabilize yourself? What happens is you tend to set your budget with a certain level of expected return. And anything that goes in excess of that, you put aside. Now, by putting it aside, it doesn't help you if the money just sits in the bank. Money in the bank does not solve problems. Money in the bank does not just grow. So most countries began to invest it. And so by investing it, you also grow the fund such that when you have either a decline in the price of crude oil or diamonds or whatever it is your economy is based on, you can use those returns to try and make it smoother. So that's a simple concept of it. Now, we came to the party a little later than most of our peers because if you notice, most of the Arab countries started in the 70s. Kuwait is the oldest, started in 1953, 1956. Qatar, Abu Dhabi, the rest of them, Qatar started early as well. But you see most of the other ones started in the 70s. The largest sovereign wealth fund in the world is the one in Norway, which started in the 90s. But theirs is a very different model. They don't even bring the money from their revenue from crude oil into the economy at all. They save every single dollar that they receive and they invest it. So the point here is very simple. Commodity economies like our own is very, very volatile because of commodity prices. This is the right entity most countries have employed to smooth out the impact of this volatility.
So at the micro, let me further bring it at the micro level.
What does it
we
mean?
call it, AJO, savings together.
Exactly.
So at the macro level, we're talking about the sovereign wealth fund.
Absolutely.
Okay.
There were issues at the beginning.
Yes.
Have those issues been resolved? Namely, the excess crude account which you mentioned. There were champions at the time who insisted that the plain letters of the Constitution should be adhered to. Share the money and spend it right away. So where are we now with regard to those previous controversies?
I will say the following. Look, controversies around the sovereign wealth fund as a concept in most countries, except where you have an absolute dictatorship or monarchy, is always a debate. I'd like to use the word debate, not controversy. People have the right to ask questions. Now, when it comes to the Constitution, what I will also say is that there's a law backing the sovereign wealth fund. This is slightly different from the excess crude account, which was an administrative arrangement, right? The excess crude account, the sovereign wealth fund, has a legislation signed by the president in 2011. So, over time, I will say the following. the government has made 2 additional contributions of $250 million each. And we've now moved on to implementing. And I think as people start to feel the impact of what the Sovereign Wealth Fund is doing in agriculture, very recently in healthcare, you start to see a few things. Some of the engagements in toll roads and power and gas to power, people begin to understand the impact of it. But that is just one aspect of what it does. The real aspect is also the fact that we invest internationally and we're able to show profitability and accountability. Those are the reasons why people will ask less questions. If you become transparent and show them that you're accountable, whether it's good or bad, at least they know. People tend to ask a little bit less questions. So at the beginning, I would say most of those things were legitimate questions, all of them. But most of those questions had to be addressed through what you do on a day-to-day basis. And so to a large extent, I would say there's a lot less controversy now, or as you described it, or a lot less debate, is what I would say at the moment. But that doesn't mean it's over. My sense is that the next time we don't do well, people are going to smack us on the head, and they deserve to. It's their money.
Okay, just again to add to Kingsley's question, like you said, at the outset there was a kind of political consensus, that led to the creation of the fund. In terms of remittances, have you also enjoyed this consensus?
Absolutely, absolutely. So I will say this. First of all, you cannot contribute to the Sovereign Wealth Fund without the National Economic Council approving. National Economic Council is a council that is chaired by the President. In most cases, the Vice President chairs on behalf of the President. It has all the 36 state governors who also represent the local governments. So these are the shareholders of the Sovereign Wealth Fund. When you look at the NSIA, the Sovereign Wealth Fund, if you come to our accounts, every single local government is named. So it's not just $1 billion. It's $1 billion that goes at the beginning, 48% to the federal government, then every state, every local government. So you need their consensus. These are the shareholders. So the last 2 contributions we have received are $250 million apiece. And this was by unanimous agreement of the shareholders, which is represented by National Economic Council. So I will say that the fact that the government has gone on to make additional contribution, which, by the way, is a fantastic accomplishment. In the middle of a recession, they still managed to find the discipline to save and put into the Sovereign Wealth Fund. I think to some extent that has allowed me to believe that most of the early controversies have been assuaged.
Who are the shareholders?
You and I. All the local governments, 774 local governments, all the area councils, all the states, and the federal government represented by the Minister of Finance, the ones who sit on the Governing Council of the Nigeria Sovereign Investment Authority.
Let's not split hairs over the governance mechanism, because when you say a fund, the impression that comes right away is that this is like a trust.
Yes.
And therefore you ask, who are the trustees? And then who are the beneficiaries? So you and I are the ultimate beneficiaries as Nigerian citizens.
That is correct.
But who exactly are the trustees? How is the fund governed through the investment authority?
So there's a board. There's a board appointed by the President in conjunction with the National Economic Council on the recommendation of the Minister of Finance. This board members represent each of the geopolitical zones. They are the ones that govern it. The board members are selected through various processes, but that is the ultimate decision-making body at the moment. Certain investments that are more social tend to go to National Economic Council. Every year, we go and account. Many of you see annual reports are published every quarter. Accounts are published every quarter, annual reports every year. We go and account to National Economic Council. That's really the governance mechanism. So you have a board, and then you have National Economic Council.
Well, in terms of investment decisions,
yes,
whose responsibility is this? Ordinarily, in corporate governance, that will be the responsibility of the board. But to the extent that you have an overarching political structure, what is the relationship, therefore, between the sovereign, between the investment authority and the political authority? In this case, namely, the Ministry of Finance, and then ultimately, Mr. President.
But the law says the NSIA is independent in its decision-making. And this is why I think, and it's not because I'm the one running it today, I would like to believe this organization will be here for the next 50, 100 years and more. You spend more time trying to find the right people to manage it. Do you understand? And so every single sovereign wealth fund I know, most of the emphasis is selecting the actual team whose job it is to make the decision of what to invest in and account for you. Once you select the right people, then you should let them work. That is how it should run. Otherwise, if you subject every investment to political debate, you're not going to do anything. But that is also not how the law is written. The law says there is a management and there's a board. You empower them through the law and let them do their work.
And you've been doing your work?
I believe I've been doing my work.
What is it you've been doing?
Quite a number of things. So there are 3 funds we run at the NSIA. The first fund is called the Stabilization Fund. The second one is the Future Generations Fund. And the third one is the Nigeria Infrastructure Fund. Now, we can talk about the Nigeria Infrastructure Fund later because there are a lot of specifics that we can go into, and I don't like it to skew the conversation. First of all, we have run this organization now. We started investing in September of 2013, and I'd like to believe we've been profitable every single month that we've been investing. Not as spectacular as most, because we also have to be conservative. This last year that has just ended, I think 2016 we reported a net profit of, if you look at core profits, over 40 billion naira. And overall with the devaluation, because we invested in more than 17 different currencies and different countries. So if you look at the FX impact, because the naira devalued, and most of it was outside the country, we reported a headline profit of 142 billion naira. Now, obviously, that had a lot of impact from the foreign exchange. This year also, the results are not complete. The auditors are auditing. I expect that we'll, so far from what I've seen, we're also still very profitable. Obviously, we are now allocating our capital more now to infrastructure. So the headline profit you've seen from the investment we made investing internationally will be much lower because we're now involved in agriculture. And I can speak specifically to what we're doing in agriculture, which is quite fascinating. We're involved in healthcare. We're involved in a handful of toll roads. We're involved in some gas-to-power projects and power. And we're looking at a few things now in water resources. So let me speak to the specifics of what the Future Generation Funds does. It's a diversified portfolio, mostly invested outside the country. And we're involved in private equity. We're involved in what we call public equities, like, you know, the US market, the Japanese market, and the European market, and other emerging markets. We're also involved in what we call other diversifiers. And some of the businesses we invest in, some of them are actually quite eclectic, exotic in the sense that one of the ones I like, my favorite ones, is an investment we made in what we call healthcare royalties. It's a company that goes to universities and buys patents. So for every time the pharmaceutical companies sell drugs, we get paid a royalty. It's an investment we made about 3 years ago, highly profitable. We're invested in 1 or 2 aircraft leasing companies internationally also. Some of these international investments, all of them have been very, very, very profitable for us. So it's done quite well. So this is what's growing the fund. Domestically, one of the things we got involved in was in working with the presidency in what we call the Presidential Fertilizer Initiative. And the idea was very simple. Why is fertilizer so expensive? Why is it heavily subsidized?
Sorry, before you get into the area of, yes, you said something earlier on about the Future Generations Fund.
Yes.
That you invest internationally.
That is correct.
And if you're going to stabilize, one of your roles is to stabilize the economy.
Yes.
I'm sure this is the thinking of economists. Would also be investing, here rather than investing outside the country.
That's interesting.
What's the wisdom in that?
That's interesting logic. But when your economy is in trouble and you're already here, how do you stabilize? Your intervention currency is the US dollar. Okay, don't forget that. And consequently, when you have, again, don't forget commodity is up and down, right? We don't really determine that. So your intervention has to come with funds you have outside. It's not, if you're already in the country and the country is in recession and you're as deeply embedded, you will not have the right balance in your portfolio. So it's not everything that's domestic. We invest 40% domestic, 60% international. The international investment is what is going to be used to stabilize the economy. It's simple as that. Because if you're already in 100% in the country, how do you stabilize? How do you stabilize? Seriously. Because you're already part of the economy. So the reality is you have to have that balance. And it requires discipline to have that balance. I've heard this debate all the time, we should invest everything domestically. That's not really the truth. The reality also is, and we can go on for a very long time, we also use some of the investments we make internationally to attract co-investors for the ones we make domestically. So you cannot say, we have all this problem, therefore we must put everything in the economy. The next recession, you're already part of it. You can't intervene.
Can you give us examples of the investors that you've been able to attract into the country?
So I'll give you an example in agriculture now, right? So last week we just closed the first investment with a company called UFF. UFF is a specialist agriculture investor in South Africa. And we both raised a fund. They committed $50 million, we committed $50 million. This is what they do all over the world. And they've closed their first investment, which is a maize and soy farm with integrated feed mill in Nasarawa State. They're going to revamp the dam, the irrigation, all of that stuff. So that investment is closed. We have a commitment now on our healthcare investments with another company called Abraj. When we invest, they partner with us. So we have one for industrial real estate with Old Mutual, $100 million apiece. So these are the co-investors we've attracted. We created a company called InfraCredit with Garantco in the UK. Again, we put $25 million, Garantco guaranteed $50 million into the country. So these are the investments that have come into Nigeria in partnership with the NSIA.
All right, return to agriculture and the fertilizer initiative we're talking about.
Yes.
So return to it.
I'll return to it. Okay, so the president, I mean, this is, first of all, we all work at the pleasure of the president. So this is really his concept and his idea, and we just worked as an implementing agency. It started with two questions. Why is it so expensive? And why is it that farmers can't get it on time? Why do we spend so much on subsidy and people still complain they cannot get it? Let's have a whole new paradigm. And I would like to say that, very upfront, it was not our concept. It was a concept that came from the presidency, and then we implemented it. What did we do? At the moment, up until we started this program, we import fully compound fertilizer blended. No value added in Nigeria. Meanwhile, we have 36 blending plants that have been allowed to waste. Why? The reality is it's easier to import than it is to actually do something locally. So what we did was to work, again, to design this program where we revived 11 blending plants that have been completely abandoned. They need 4 components to blend fertilizer. They need urea, they need potash, they need phosphate, and they need limestone. Urea and limestone we have domestically. Phosphate and potash we import. The president had a discussion with the King of Morocco, and we entered into a bilateral agreement for them to give us phosphate. So with that, we only need one component to import, potash. And so what we did was very simple. We set up a company called NAIC NPK. The job of NAIC NPK was to make sure that all of these components are brought in, given to the blending plants. The blending plants blend, sell to agro-dealers, state governments. Simple. Now, last year the program was for 10 million bags, and we brought in materials for 10 million bags. Most of it sold through. And for the first 8 million bags, we were operating at under 5,000 naira a bag. The year before, fertilizer was being sold at 11 to 12,000 naira a bag. So the sell-through to the customer was 5,500 naira to the farmers. So on a year-on-year basis, the price of fertilizer was down almost 50%.
What is the current price per bag of kg?
We're still selling at 5,500. I think the market is kind of up and down. The market's about 6,000, 6,500. But think about it on a year-on-year basis. First of all, not 1 naira of subsidy was needed. Not one. 11 blending plants were revived. I went to some of these blending plants. Some of them hadn't had one person working it for 10 years, 12 years, 20 years.
What is the interest of the investment authority in the fertilizer plants that have been revived?
The interest?
Did you acquire equity, or was this a grant? Was it a loan?
No. It's contract manufacturing. So what they do is they manufacture for us. So we pay them a fee to manufacture for us and sell. The raw material, the sale, everything belongs to us. So you are the manufacturer, and we just say to you, look, first of all, we can't invest in you, right? But you have the manufacturing facility. Manufacture for us. It's some principle you use for most electronics today, for example. So if you look at Apple, most of your phone is not made by Apple. It's made by Foxconn or all these other companies. Contract manufacturing. So we agree a fee. We pay you the fee. You blend for us. It's part of the model. We sit down, open book. Show us your cost. We show us what we can do. I mean, it was quite a fascinating program because people who worked on it really worked extremely hard. We put together 64 contracts with each of these blending plants, with the agro dealers, with the transporters. There were more than 17,000 truck movements in a year.
Is this sustainable, long term,
or medium
term?
Oh, absolutely sustainable in long term. Ideally, it should be a company on its own rights. And this is also one of the things to do in NSIA. Quite a few companies have been incubated within NSIA and spun off. So Mortgage Financing Company was incubated in NSIA. InfraCredit, of course, I've talked about. The Development Bank of Nigeria, Family Homes Funds, all of these are entities that have been incubated within the NSIA. This is one of those that I think should be spun off eventually.
But it's when you say incubated, which means that the NSIA still has its equity in those companies.
Absolutely.
Fully owned, or
Some are.
ratios?
Infracredit is still largely owned by the NSIA. New equity investors are coming in now. I've been in various conversations with various people. I can't disclose their names, but there'll be more people coming in.
You know, Kingsley, I was wondering, because if you talk about agriculture now,
yes,
it's highly technologically driven.
Absolutely.
And that's, of course, the new, age that, agri-countries are moving into. Sure. And I'm wondering why the NSIA is I'm wondering if you're looking towards that direction, not just in revitalizing fertilizer plants.
Sure. So we are. I mean, the broad strategy for agriculture is following, right? So fertilizer is one aspect. Seeds is a totally different aspect. Actually having farms that work to the highest level of output is a different aspect. One step higher, everything from the mechanization that you need to drive agri-processing to storage and silos. And at the top of it is the commodities exchange. So our whole strategy is to play across that whole pyramid. The base are the inputs, your fertilizer, your seeds, your macronutrients, all of that stuff. In the middle are the infrastructure, from mechanization to storage. At the top is commodity exchange, which is an entity that we have expressed interest in acquiring, and we're in the process of acquiring it at the moment.
All right. Earlier you talked about Sovereign Investment Authority getting into healthcare.
Yes.
Tell us some more about that.
Well, so we have, at the moment, in fact, we just signed an investment management agreement with the Ministry of Health to invest in 8 teaching hospitals. We have an advanced program with Luth to do a cancer center at Luth. And that is almost close to signing. It's been over a year of work with Luth. And this is a public-private partnership where we actually bring in the right equipment and design the management team. At the end of the day, most entities in Nigeria today fail because of not having the right management or not having the right type of capital. Most things are over-leveraged, not the right people running it. So what we've done with some of these places is, look, we're not doctors, but we'll hire the right people to run it. We will invest the right type of capital. Look at cancer treatment in Nigeria today. It is a problem. Most people that travel abroad for medical treatment go abroad because of things that can be fixed domestically. We have some of the smartest oncologists that I know, and I've seen them. And so first is Luth, and then we are spreading out. We're doing advanced diagnostic centers with Aminu Kano Teaching Hospital and with Federal Medical Center Umuahia. And then part of the new program we've just signed with Federal Ministry of Health will see us put everything from chemotherapy to renal treatment, and people will pay for those things. On the model that we have today, the cancer center will be profitable, the renal centers will be profitable, the chemo centers will be profitable. You know why? Because you go abroad. You go to India. When you go to India, people go to India, they take somebody with them. It's expensive. So that is why medical tourism, in my opinion, is something that must be addressed. It's a profitable entity. See, the difference between what we do and what the budget does is when we go into some of these entities or into some of these areas, we design a business model, because unless the business is profitable, it cannot be sustainable.
We talk about all this, sorry, Casey, we talk about all this, often and all that. Do we have a timeline for all this?
Yes. For what we do?
Yes.
Yes, we do. But our timeline is driven by our own governance process. So if you look at the fertilizer program, that was from concept to execution was 8 weeks. Healthcare is taking a little bit longer because there's a whole process for PPPs in Nigeria which we have to go through. It's been almost 9 months to a year of preparation, and it should be ready for signing in the next month.
Still on the healthcare, with regard to the PPP arrangements, for 8 teaching hospitals, you said?
Yes, to start with.
Yeah, to start with. What lessons, if any, has the Investment Authority learned from the fiasco we had some years ago with regard to the centers of excellence, that the teaching hospitals were so regarded, and yet, going down the road, they provided no excellence?
Sure. Well, first of all, I couldn't speak to specifically why some of those didn't work. We've read what we can. We've interviewed many people we can. But I tell you something, almost every business fails with regards to management, period. And so in our case, the management is incentivized to make it work. There's a board, separate from the whole board of the teaching hospitals, that will run the particular entity. Some of these entities also fail, not necessarily because of management, but also because the capital contribution process is very spotty. Some of them will go many months before they can get their project allocation, release, and it kind of gets filtered into all kinds of things. If you now say, look, this is a cancer center. The cancer center has a board. It has investors. The investors' role is to make sure the investments are maintained. Their job is to make sure that you have the right type of governance and capital provision. If you do that, you're providing good service, customers will come. So if you separate it from everything else that is so, and I know it's a very complex job running a teaching hospital, but these businesses are separated and we are focused on hiring the right people to run it. That, I think, is where it starts and stops.
Mr. Orji, I hope you do not, of course, get into the debate of affordability of healthcare again when you start running your PPPs, because ultimately we know some top drawer health facilities in this country. I mean, you will have affordability is a major challenge for most Nigerians. So you're going to perhaps factor that in so that the socialist debate doesn't then arise while they're charging so much.
That's why it's taking us a year to prepare.
All right.
Well, let's come to infrastructure now.
Exactly.
Infrastructure. You said you were going to tarry a while before getting into infrastructure. We'll like you to talk about infrastructure now before we return again to stabilization.
Sure.
Infrastructure.
Yes.
Two critical areas. Talk about nothing else for now. Second Niger Bridge, Lagos-Ibadan Expressway.
Sure. So, I mean, I think you said Lagos-Ibadan Expressway. You've seen us go to the Senate and House of Reps and answer questions on that. Second Niger Bridge, we got involved in the project in 2014. And the process has been a little slower than I'd like it to be. Simple as that. And the reason is because we have not still received the concession agreement, but we've done preparatory work. Some of the preparatory work we did at the beginning was to get involved in negotiating the cost of the project, and we played a big role in reducing the cost substantially of the design. It's a big project, by the way. So when people hear Second Niger Bridge, they think it's just, 1 kilometer bridge that crosses the road. No. Onitsha is so built up now that you cannot put a bridge the size of Second Niger Bridge into Onitsha. So this bridge actually circumnavigates Onitsha, goes round it with 3 extra outlets, one into Onitsha, and then goes all the way from behind the Asaba Airport, if you know the area, all the way to Owerri Interchange, the road that goes to Owerri. The entire length, including the approach road, is 44 kilometers. Now, to put in perspective, the current Niger Bridge is 1.5 kilometers. The road area where it's going through is marshy, right? So you have to build almost 12 kilometers of stilts of bridge so that you can cross, and we expect to reclaim a lot of land in that area. It's a complex project, very, very complex project. But where we stand today, the House of Reps have given the Ministry of Works 2 months from, I think, 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago to complete the final contracts. Unfortunately, it got caught up, obviously, in the transition, and people had to ask questions, we had to stop, we had to explain. But from where we are now, I think we're back on track. There's a whole new funding mechanism that we're developing, and I'm sure that both the Minister of Works and Minister of Finance will announce it as soon as we're ready.
Does this speak of absence of political will? Because we've been hearing of this Second Niger Bridge, like you said, for quite some time now.
I don't know how long you've been hearing about it. We've been involved in it for at least 3 years, coming up to 4. When we got into this project as a PPP now, okay. Now, of course, I'm Nigerian, so I know we've been hearing about it since the 60s and 70s and 80s and 90s, But the PPP arrangement, which is a whole new structure to it, is only very recent. It takes a long time to develop PPPs, a long time. You raised the point about affordability. It's the most critical issue around PPPs. After a while, will the governance system allow it to be as independent? Can it be affordable? Right. Those are the things we need to agree on first. Okay, once we agree on all those things, those are basic contractual elements. Once you put them in place and investors feel comfortable, money will flow in. This is a very expensive project, by the way, $700 million, so it's not chump change,
That's the Second Niger Bridge.
Absolutely. And so this money is not coming from us alone. It's coming from many other people. Part of our job is to go and raise the capital for Second Niger Bridge. So there are a lot of contractual elements. Now, let me tell you something, and I know there's a tendency to think that things are generally very slow, and they tend to be. But the average road project I have seen as a PPP has taken anywhere between 5 and 6 years to develop.
Do you see a political will to get this done, the Niger Bridge?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I can tell you this, you know why? We've been under a lot of pressure to try and get, but for some of these contractual elements take time, because I'm the one that will go out there and convince the other sovereign wealth funds to please come and invest with me. Convince other institutional investors to come and invest with me. Do you understand? So everything from, let's talk about affordability, okay? The national tolling policy must be in place, because people need to be comfortable that a tariff setting mechanism has a legal basis. So that policy is working its way through the National Assembly. It's important. Because when there's a tolling policy, people will now know, not tomorrow now, there's election. You now say there's no tolling. No. So those things are important because you're bringing other people's capital. That's number one. Number two, compensation. 44 kilometers of bridge. Right now, what you have today is 1 lane going, 1 lane coming. What we're building is 3 lanes going, 3 lanes coming with emergency lanes. So it's effectively 4 lanes going. It's a big project.
That's almost like it's a part of the Third Mainland Bridge in Lagos, although slightly longer now, considering what you just said. Lagos-Ibadan Expressway.
Yes. Lagos-Ibadan. Lagos-Ibadan, we're involved in trying to work out a new solution to it. As you very well know, that is a little bit more legally encumbered than Second Niger Bridge. Second Niger Bridge, there's no legal challenge. Lagos-Ibadan, there is a legal challenge. There had been a concessionaire, but I really would like not to speak much more because some of these things are being handled at a higher level than myself.
Just the last one. You're expanding to include oil and gas, and I'm wondering
Gas.
Oh, all right, gas. Can you speak to us why you're expanding into this area?
Absolutely. First of all, one of the biggest challenges I see in our economy is we are used to selling raw materials and importing finished goods. We sell liquefied natural gas and we import ammonia. We import methanol. We import fertilizer. Urea is largely natural gas. So we want to be in an area where we can start to play in that, what we describe as middle market industrialization. Gas is one of the most potent raw materials for modern day industrialization.
All right.
It cuts across many areas.
I have to stop you, Mr. Uche Orji, at this point. Managing Director and CEO of the Nigeria Sovereign Investment Authority. Thank you very much for coming to share more light on this concept.
Always a pleasure. Thank you very much.
You're watching Good Morning Nigeria. That, of course, does it for our first discussion. We'll be right back.
Nigerian Television Authority. Now we're getting to our second topic for discussion this morning, which has to do with the economic recovery and growth plan of the current administration. As a background to our conversation, let's join again our correspondent Timothy Yusuf with a report.
Nigeria's potential to become a major player in the global economy has never been in doubt because of its abundant human and natural resource endowments. However, this potential has remained grossly untapped over the years for many reasons, including the neglect of agriculture and over-reliance on crude oil. Analysts say this and several policy somersaults left the country ill-prepared and vulnerable to global shocks occasioned by fall in oil prices and absence of production capacity, cemented by heavy import-dependent consumption. When Nigeria's economy eventually slipped into recession, the Buhari administration took several steps to revive the economy, among them the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan, ERGP, 2017 to 2020. The three broad strategic objectives of the ERGP are to restore growth, invest in human capital, and build a globally competitive economy. Since the launch of the plan, the nation's real GDP growth rate has returned to positive since second quarter of 2017, indicating the economy's exit from recession. In executing the ERGP initiative, policy laboratories were conceived. The focus of the labs is to stimulate new investments for critical projects, facilitate job creation and resolution of complex interagency problems that inhibit private sector investment in the economy. Launching the second phase of the pre-lab last week, Vice President Yemi Osinbajo said the target is to generate $24 billion worth of investment for the country, led by the private sector. 15 million jobs and a projected gross domestic product growth of 3.5% is expected this year and 7% growth by 2020. The Economic Recovery and Growth Plan serves as an umbrella framework that incorporates 60 national development strategies. 12 of these strategies, including infrastructure, industrial and power sector development, have been identified as priorities. About a year after establishment, what are the achievements of the ERGP? How has it impacted on the economy? What are the challenges? These are questions guests shall be looking at shortly.
Many thanks, Timothy Yusuf, for providing us with that background report. Let's welcome our guest here in the studio. We have Mr. Tunde Lawal. He's the Director, Macroeconomic Analysis, Ministry of Budget and National Planning. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
All right, Kingsley.
Yeah, we have two other guests here with us in the studios. First, we'd like to welcome Dr. Nazifi Darma. He's a development economist at the University of Abuja. Dr. Darma, a pleasure to have you join us again on Good Morning Nigeria.
Good morning and good morning, Nigeria.
All right, and also here with us is Dr. Tayo Adeloju of the Nigerian Economic Summit Group. Dr. Adeloju, pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you. Good morning. Good morning, Nigeria.
All right, Claire, let's begin with Mr. Tunde Lawal. The economic recovery and growth plan, so far, how far?
Thank you very much. The economic recovery and growth plan, like you saw in the editorial we just saw, it's a medium-term plan, 2017 to 2020. And at inception, there were clearly three broad objectives. The first, which has to do with the restoring and sustaining growth, investing in Nigerian people, and of course the third one has to do with building competitive economy. Of course, we also had some clear targets. Targets, for example, if you talk about the GDP, I mean, moving from where we are in 2016, for example, a contraction of 1.58% to about 7% by 2020. I mean, we had the issue of stabilizing the exchange rate, and of course, the issue of having a single-digit inflation rate, for example, by 2020. Now, where are we in terms of performance? Of course, we know too well that in terms of the first objective, which is restoring and sustaining growth, we know that we already exited recession. As at Q2 2017, we had a GDP growth rate, as released by the National Bureau of Statistics, of 0.72%, and by Q3, we had a consolidated, almost double, about 1.40%. In terms of the inflation rate, we also saw a downward trend from 18.72% in January, for example, of 2017 to as low as 15.37% in December of 2017, which indeed surpassed the ERGP target of 15.74%. Now, in terms of the external reserves, we were down to as low as $23.8 billion sometime in October, for example, 2016. But as we speak, by end of December 2017, we had gone as high as $40 billion. Now, of course, we can go on and on in terms of the economic indices. That where are we? Now, I want to talk about this. I mean, oil. We continuously relying on oil. Now, stability has been maintained in the Niger Delta region, and you know that has led to our oil production averaging about 2 million barrels per day, as against when we had it as 1.1 million barrels sometime in 2016. So I think, yes, we've made some progress in terms of GDP growth rate. We ended also we ended positive. We're in the positive terrain. But of course, the issue is that we're not really where we want to be. Some progress is being made. We know there are still some issues, and the issues government is trying to address. I heard you in the documentary mentioning the issue of the focus labs. In fact, the focus labs is clearly one of the areas, one of the strategies government wants to use in addressing some of these challenges.
Okay,
and what are these focus labs?
Let's pause it for a while. Yes. We'll get to that. Let's quickly do a little, of course, of evaluation of the structure of the strategy. Mr. Adeloju, you of the Economic Summit, you've listened to the economic indices that Mr. Lawal has rolled out in terms of achievement and performance of the instrument, that's the ERGP. From your perspective, what do you attribute, the progress made so far?
So fundamentally, we are in total agreement with the plan. If you remember, in 2016, October, one of the recommendations of the Economic Summit was actually the need for the country to put a recovery plan in place. So we supported that process with our partners in budget and planning, and have really been a stakeholder in ensuring that private sector input went into the recovery and growth plan in the first place. The plan has triggered several positive signaling because, as you know, investors look at policy signaling as the basis to build investment confidence, which then drives capital flows. So if you look at the growth we've experienced in 2017 that moved us out of recession, a big part of that was positive signaling. We saw business confidence in Q2, Q3, and Q4 grow as government focused on the plan. And by January this year, you saw that the capital market has grown, outperforming the rest of the world in January 2018. So we think that the growth is welcome, but it's fragile because it's oil-led. We still need to drive the second component of the first pillar of the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan, which focuses on diversification. We saw strong indications that agri-led growth, which went from 3.1% to 4% GDP, was a real positive signal as to where Nigeria can go. But a lot still needs to be done. Of course, that agri-led growth is now threatened by some of the security issues in the north central we are seeing with herdsman-settler clashes. We're at the beginning of the planting season, for example, and those type of threats can easily take us back, for example, if we do not curtail some of those issues.
So basically?
So basically, the ERGP has performed in its first year. It has met the basic expectation. However, unemployment kept rising, which is the residual effect of the recession. So whilst the numbers moved positively, the effect on the man on the street, which of course is where Nigerians debate with us, the economists, about the fundamentals, the effect on the man of the street has not yet been felt. So we cannot yet celebrate. There still needs to be a sense of urgency to act.
All right,
All right, Dr. Aderoju, thank you very much. Dr. Nazifi Dama, let's have your own comment on the ERGP about a year later.
Well, you know, I've had fundamental disagreement about the structure of the ERGP in the first place. When you talk about medium-term plan, it is beyond the simplistic nature that the ERGP has taken it into. It is ideal in a plan for you to have a program, you have a target, you have objective. But what we need are real projects and programs that will encapsulate the clearly defined objectives so that Nigerians can be able to measure in clear terms what is the performance and achievement sector by sector. That is one. Number two, the National Planning Commission promised to roll out that, and that has not happened. Number three, up till today, we don't have up-to-date sectoral policies and programs that align with the ERGP, and that is a fundamental problem. Number four, up till today, we are implementing an envelope budgeting system. We have not graduated to a program-based budgeting because the ERGP is just like the National Economic Empowerment and Development Strategy, which has just clearly defined objectives, targets, and so on. And for an economy that is 180 million people, with over 40 million citizens unemployed, our needs and wants should go beyond defining strategies and targets. We must be able to have clearly defined medium-term plan costed with clear indication of responsibility. What is the proportion of federal government financing? What is the proportion of state government financing? What is the proportion of local government financing? What is the proportion of private sector financing? And to be able to do that, we must be able to revise the outdated, the outmodeled public-private partnership policies that we have, because it's not in synchronization with what we need. We can't be budgeting 25, 30 billion in an economy of 180 million people. Our partners, our peers in Brazil, in India, in Malaysia, in South Africa, their budget per capita is sometimes 10 or 15 times higher than ours. And the reality is that the federal government, the state government, and the local government don't have that money. You can't create money in an economy within a short period.
Professor Dama, let me quickly chip in here. Do you deny that the economic indices that both Dr. Adeloju and Mr. Tudor have rolled out has been triggered by the ERGP? Do you deny that?
I am not denying them, but I am emphasizing the fact that we could have done much better than we do if we have taken a path that is better than what we are taking.
So you do acknowledge some progress?
Yes,
made?
certainly some progress has been made.
Just before I bring in Mr. Lawal, you're going to respond to what Nazifi has said. Dr. Dama, you talked about indicating projects and programs as key elements of a plan of this nature. But the plan also envisages macroeconomic stability. What kind of project do you need for macroeconomic stability? For instance, if you look at the range of monetary policy measures that we have seen from the central bank, would that require a project?
Well, when you are talking about macroeconomic indicators, you are talking about clear policy direction. When you are talking about projects and programs, we are talking about specific actions that will move the economy much more quicker out of this recession, create mass of employment, generate so much income so that the economy can be repleted and the citizens will feel the impact of a changed government. That is one. Okay. Number two, when you look at what is happening, as I've said in other economies, the reality is that our economy is oil-led. You cannot deny that. It is also a fact that the government is making efforts toward moving the economy out of oil domination, particularly with the spectacular performance in the agriculture sector. You cannot deny that. But the reality is that you cannot move an economy like ours to a position of creating mass employment and generating the required wealth we have with the quantum of resource spending that we are having today, because it is inadequate relative to the needs and wants that we have. The same National Planning Commission developed the National Integrated Master Plan, National Integrated Infrastructure Master Plan, and we required over 900 trillion in Nigeria terms for you to be able to implement that plan. But we don't have that money, and we cannot be able to solve that money internally. But what I'm saying in effect is that we have slept for too long in terms of reviving the capacity of the economy to attract legitimate domestic and external private sector funding to complement little government resources by implementing and using antiquated and outdated public-private sector partnership policy.
Yeah, thank you very much. First of all, quickly too, when I was talking earlier, I'm coming to Nazifi's comments, I addressed only one leg of the objective 2, in terms of investing in our people. Because it's not all about statistics, macro statistics. Investing in our people, and I want to say boldly, under that objective, government has moved swiftly in implementing the social investment program. For example, as we speak, and this is in line with the ERGP's target, government has tried to assist about 6 million primary school students, in terms of the school feeding program, in about 28,434 schools in 19 states. The records are there. In terms of N-Power program, about 200,000 have been engaged, people who are unemployed. And of course, we have the last bit, about 250,000 credits have been granted to artisans and so on. Now, coming to the last pillar, which is the building competitive economy. Just one point, and the point is that where were we in terms of our targets, 170. Nigeria ranked 170 in terms of ease of doing business. But because government, in line with the ERGP, set up the payback and tried to introduce several initiatives, to ensure that we have, business is easy. All these constraints to business are, today, we have moved about 24 points, 145 position. So coming back to Nasifi's comments, yes, he's made the comments that the budget, the plan must have detailed implementation projects and programs. Yes, and I must say that beginning from 2017 budget, the ERGP guided its preparation. It has never happened before. How do you guide the preparation of annual budgets? You guide it because MDAs had already prepared in a coordinated manner the sectoral projects and programs. That was used for the 2017 budget. It was also used for the 2018 budget, which is currently at the National Assembly. And for the first time, you will see that in terms of capital allocation, capital budget allocation, for the first time, under the ERGP, it was mentioned that 30% at a minimum be set for capital. And that had been the guiding principle, beginning from even 2016, when we had the SIP for the 2016 budget obtained. A minimum of 30% was set. In 2017, the same thing. That's why you see that about 1.2 trillion naira was released, for capital infrastructure projects, both for 2016 and 2017. Now, coming to the last point he made, and I quite appreciate what he said, that we don't have the money. Yeah, and that's why the ERGP really says that the private sector will be the driver. It will be the driver of this economy. You in your editorial, in your documentary, you made mention that $24 billion. No, that's not it. When the Vice President launched last week, it was $245 billion we're talking about. And in the ratio of, during the lapse, it's in the ratio of 80%, private sector, and 20% for the public, because we've realized that even power alone, what you require, the whole budget would take it.
Mr. Lawal, yeah, sorry. Let's hold you and bring in Dr. Adeloju. Dr. Adeloju, we'd like for you to give what Professor Dama, the issues he raised earlier on, some life with regards to the structure and perhaps the performance metrics, evaluation metrics. And take along with it the fact that, according to NBS, the unemployment rate is still in double digits. Now, if we are having our economy, growing in the rebounds, of course, by an average of 2.5%, why haven't we seen a corresponding, growth in terms of jobs?
So the first thing is that our economic growth is still a fragile growth, because even the ERGP underpins Nigeria's growth as to divest from oil-led growth. The second point which Prof made, and I totally agree with, and it's also in the ERGP, is that it's supposed to be an investment, a private sector investment-led plan. Yeah. Now, the implications of that is that private sector must feel confident, because when we discuss jobs, investments trigger opportunities, opportunities trigger jobs. It's just that simple. The logic will not change. So what has happened is that we have experienced fragile growth on the premise of normalcy in both the external sector, both in terms of oil and gas and in terms of reserves. That's what has triggered the growth we're seeing. We must move further, and moving further means that we must be able to attract capital flows into the different the non-oil sectors, and in fact even the oil sectors, particularly gas infrastructure, etc., and refining our products here, to be able to see the trajectory we need to see. For that to happen, private sector must feel comfortable with the environment, and we're seeing a build in confidence. What we hope that we can do this year, particularly with the Pamando Malaysian-style sector labs, is to sit with government in the sector labs and have a conversation as to, okay, I'm in agriculture. I want to do agro-industrialization. I want 50,000 hectares of land, 30,000 hectares of land. What would the incentives be for me to move into agriculture at the scale that takes us in accelerated growth? And Dr. Lawal is right, because, look, the size of what we need to grow simply is not available in terms of the kind of resources we're generating. And government has optimized its fiscal instruments and monetary instruments to a certain degree. We've seen monetary policy optimization. We saw debt optimization. In fact, at a certain point, debt rebalancing in terms of external debt was required because we had crowded up the private sector in terms of domestic debt. We've seen moves to do tax to GDP growth. So the instrument that needs to be deployed, which Prof has pointed to, is the investment drive, which then guarantees that capital flows that are out of government purview will come. And this is not just what Nigeria needs to do. All the countries that are commodity-led are doing it. We're seeing it in Saudi Arabia. The Crown Prince went out to look for $200 billion last year. This year he's targeting about $1.34 trillion because he knows that commodity-led growth is no longer sustainable.
All right, Dr. Adeloju, thank you very much. Plus the fact that the Saudi authorities have also lately been able to recover some monies from persons who have been cracked down in the anti-corruption fight in that kingdom. Some of them stayed in 5-star, 7-star hotels, and they refunded billions of dollars. But very quickly, before we come back to Dr. Dama, Mr. Lawal, tell us some more about the focus labs. The World Laboratory will conjure up some science. Is this some alchemy or what? What's going on with the focus labs?
well, the focus labs, for short, I mean, many people have asked, is it a laboratory? Yeah, well, it's a workshop kind of arrangement where you bring actors from the private sector and the public sector together in a place for a period of time. Maybe in this case, we're talking about 6 weeks, to resolve lingering issues with a view to attracting foreign investment to further deepen the implementation of the ERGP and actualization of the targets. Like I mentioned to you, we talked about, not only to achieve investment, but of course, also to generate jobs. Because when there are investments, the issue of job creation, right? Although the ERGP envisages 15 million jobs at the end of 2020. But the jobs are not coming from government, mark you. The job will come even from the private sector. Government will just provide the enabling environment. For example, if you get the power right, of course, most businesses will come on board. The ease of, if you remove all these bottlenecks, you have private sector organizations coming, and they will be able to, generate jobs. So, in Nigeria, we are starting with 3 focus labs, 3, and the first one will be on agriculture plus transportation as one area. The second one will be on manufacturing plus processing. That's another focal area. The third one will be on power plus gas. Those are the areas which are also in line with the key execution priorities of government. And in terms of the time frame, we intend that this will be from January 15, to May 13. And this will be in 3 phases. The first phase, which is the pre-lab era, January 15 to March 4. We are in that phase currently. We are working with the relevant sector ministries because the sector ministers are supposed to be the drivers of this lab. They know their investors. And when we talk about investors, we are not talking about foreign investors alone. We are talking about both foreign and domestic investors. So the second phase will start from March 5, and it will end April 15. And of course, the post-lab, which is actually the implementation phase, will start April 16 and end in May 13th.
What is the role of the Investment Commission in all of this?
Oh, they are our key partner in this whole. We've been working closely with them, especially in this pre-lab stage. In determining who these investors will be, in determining the entry. In coming up with the templates, which we will use in harvesting information from the potential investors into for the lab process. So we're actually working closely with them, working closely with the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Investment. All these are, we're also working closely with the Power Works and Housing Ministry, working closely with the Solid Mineral Development and the Agricultural
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Lawal. Let's bring in again Dr. Nazifi. Dr. Nazifi, you don't mind. Of course, you listen to the explanations proffered by the director as well as Dr. Aduloju. Would you still insist on the position you took earlier with regard to what you've described as the absence of identifiable projects and programs in the ARGP, and take that also with the other leg of it, which has to do with building a more competitive environment? I know that infrastructure will be part of having that competitiveness, no question about that, but seeing what we have seen in terms of policy measures introduced last year and the almost immediate knock-on effect that we had, what more would you like to see in the policy arena? Plus, of course, general coordination. All these ones we are talking about now, these are things happening at the national level. What would you like to see from the subnational level?
Well, thank you very much, Kingsley. And, we have discussed this issue severally at this forum, and I'm still insisting on some of the issues and points that I have raised, which have not been addressed by the government. Now, we are a developing economy. We have resource constraints. There is a limit to what we can do with our resources. If you want anybody to partner with you, you must demonstrate clear optimality in resource allocation. We need to have clear, precise, and transparent conversation about costing of capital projects in this country. It's one of the highest in Nigeria.
In the world?
Yes, in the world. We have done some element in terms of reducing wastages about recurrent, but capital costing, we must have conversation about it. The way and manner we are costing capital projects is very suboptimal and need to be changed drastically so that we can have partners that can be able to invest in us. Number two, we need to expand as quickly as possible the scope of private sector resources being injected into the economy beyond mere investment in the stock exchange, which is venture capital. That is not realistic investment. What this country needs is investment in directly productive activities that can move the economy quickly out of recession, create massive employment, and generate so much income. Number three, we must be able to come clean to the Nigerian public that this and these are the clear projects and programs that will be undertaking so that Nigerians can evaluate this government in terms of performance sector by sector. And you see, the reality is that if the federal government is disciplined enough, automatically the subnationals copy. So incapacity or lack of doing what is right at the federal level will impede the ability of the subnationals to do what is right. I was a director in the Planning Commission with him. We know what happened during the medium-term implementation of Plan of Vision 2020, when the federal government was very categorical in terms of coming out with projects and programs fully costed. All the other states of the federation followed it. We must be able to do what is right. What we are doing is good, but it's not good enough for an emerging and competing economy in 21st century.
All right, gentlemen, thank you. We've got some tweets, so we quickly take them and then we'll continue with the concluding part of our conversation. Victor Hyosumwa tweets, the implementation of the ERGP has been impressive. We got out of recession through massive expenditure spending. My fear is I hope to delay again in the passing of the budget will not affect its effective implementation this year.
This tweet is coming from Dele Jack Solomon. It says, with judicious implementation and monitoring of the ERGP, that's the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan, the challenges facing manufacturers such as access to capital, human capital development, localization of value chain and infrastructure, among others, will be a thing of the past. This will also ensure Nigeria's continued competitiveness on the global stage. And
Festus Akimboyewa tweets, while we cannot say that we have a good environment for starting and growing a business, we should have no time for people who are only interested in talking down Nigeria, because with government ERGP, we have good reason to be confident.
Amagbola Humbabs tweets, Nigeria was on the doldrums as a corollary of wastage for a number of years. However, gradually and with tenacity of purpose, the ERGP has been efficacious and efficient. The only fear one can nurse is sustained efforts to ensure that the plan consistently achieves its objectives. The right personnel with the requisite technical know-how should be allowed to run it.
And this is coming from Sunny Michael Omakuji. The federal government is actually on her toes to bring in the economy back. But the challenge we have is with some states where some governors are not making any significant effort in complementing the federal government's effort. And that's why they are owing workers running to 27 months.
Shakiru tweets, I hope you listen, gentlemen, very carefully. It says, all the guys that you bring to NTA Good Morning Nigeria are very brilliant people and are all experts in their various fields, just like the JMN crew. But we have never seen their impact on the growth and development of Nigeria. Why?
All right. I think we have a last one. We have a last one, and it's War Odogene, and it tweets, please let Dr. Dama to be specific on the solutions for a non-antiquated PPP model. Okay?
All right, those are the tweets. I saw that, whereas Dama and Adeloju were smiling, Tunde Lawal kept quiet. I mean, it maintained the frozen appearance. But since you're still in service, I mean, that's he was there previously. But one issue that I would like you to touch on. You were reeling off the stats, with regard to what is happening in the social investment arena. Adeloju earlier also talked about what we are seeing with the performance of the stock market. These are issues that we have had cause to discuss on this program, and the reactions, of course, have been mixed, with what needs to be done and how we need to assess what we are seeing right now. Budget performance. What is the likely impact of budget performance on the effective implementation of ERGP, notwithstanding that you expect the ERGP to be largely driven by the private sector?
Yeah, thank you very much. Indeed, like the ERGP guides, first of all, the preparation of the budget. It has always been like that for 2017 and indeed 2018 proposal. So we do expect that no project or program which is not in line with the ERGP will be funded. They won't be funded. And then the government has also set up implementation delivery units. I mean, that has never happened before. These are very functional implementation units. They are staffed by people even from the private sector, and they work closely with the sector ministries. So, in the light of that, we do believe that if we go on the way the implementation is going, we do believe that we will have effective budget performance. Also know that government is trying to go back to the January to December budgeting cycle. This, again, will go a long way in ensuring effective implementation. Of course, in the last 1 year, 2 years, we've had the problem of recession, the issue of revenue issues like Dr. Dama mentioned. But of course, government has already taken that position that, look, government alone cannot do it.
All right.
You need the private sector. And that is the way to go, and that is the way government.
That's the way to go, Mr. Tunde Lawal. Let's hear from Dr. Tayo Adeloju. What might, in your opinion, be the next component of this ERGP? Considering two things, and I would appreciate if you can be brief with this. The fact that recently we've seen disruption, of course, in the fuel distribution system, and again, we've seen, of course, what is happening, of course, in the Niger Delta. So from your point of view, what is the next component?
So there are a couple of things. The first is we need to review our national price mechanisms, and we need to pay attention that you have to have macro-reflective prices to make business competitive. The second thing is you need to drive investment packaging. We have the most uncompetitive investment packaging system in Africa. Morocco has, at any point in time, 200 PPPs that are globally competitive. If you do not have investment-grade projects, which is one of the things that Prof pointed to, you cannot attract capital because investors invest in good deals. They don't look at the countries and say, I like that country, I hate that country. It's a deal. So that's number two. Number three is we must call the National Assembly to, in the spirit of economic recovery, quickly allow the constitution of the Monetary Policy Committee. It's bad signaling to the global community where you do not have the regulators of your monetary policy in place. That's one issue that we need to deal with.
All right, Dr. Adeloju, thank you very much. Dr. Dama, very briefly, closing thoughts. If we are packaging investments and say they will not look at your country, why have we not seen them in oil and gas coming to build refineries here?
Well, you see, the reality is that we are an attractive economy. With 180 million people, everybody will be interested in investing in us. But the reality is that we are competing for the same funds with other emerging economies. There is nothing rocket science in terms of structuring an so attractive public-private partnership policy. Indians have done it. As of 2011, they were able to attract $428 billion into PPP. It's not people like the affairs of Indians. It is the structure of the policy framework that is attractive. We must be able to do it right so that we can complement the little government is spending for private sector.
Dr. Nazifi Dama, development economist, University of Abuja. Always a delight having you on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot for your thoughts. We also would like to appreciate Mr. Tunde Lawal, as Director of Macroeconomic Analysis at the Federal Ministry of Budget and National Planning. Mr. Lawal, thanks a lot for sharing your thoughts with us. Also, we'd like to appreciate Dr. Tayo Adeloju, is of the Nigerian Economic Summit Group. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
All right, let's go over very quickly now to our sports desk.
Nigerian champions Plateau United started their campaign in the CAF Champions League on a resounding note by defeating Eden Sports of Cameroon 3-0 in their preliminary round first leg fixture at the New Just Stadium on Sunday. Ogene Elijah, Sunday Igbede and Joshua Obaje were all on target for the Tin City club against the Cameroonian champions. Nigeria's other representatives in the competition, MFM FC of Lagos, were held to a 1-1 draw by their host, Ray Bamako of Mali. In the first leg of their preliminary round tie, also on Sunday, the Olukoya boys, playing their first ever Champions League game, acquainted themselves well at the Stade Modibo Keita despite a bright start by their host, and took a shock lead in the 15th minute through Najib Akinyemi. The lead lasted only 2 minutes before Miakab Giscard leveled scores for the home team with a powerful header. In the CAF Confederation Cup, Akwa United fell 2-1 at home to Banjul Hawks of Gambia. It was Abdul Maikaba's men's first defeat at home in all competitions this season. And in the Nigerian Professional Football League, FC Ifeanyi picked their first win in 5 games with a comfortable 2-0 home victory against Heartland on Sunday. In Enugu, Imama Amapakabo's return to his former club ended on a sour note as Ekenemi Warriors narrowly lost 1-0 to Enugu Rangers. At the Kwara Sports Complex, Kwara United recorded their 3rd victory of the MPFL campaign after a 2-1 home win against Katsina United.
All right, Kingsley.
Yeah, that does it for us today on Good Morning Nigeria. We thank you for tuning in. We're back tomorrow same time at 7 o'clock in the morning. I'm Kingsley Osadolo. Enjoy the rest of your day.
All right, and the French will say, fait accompli, s'il vous plaît, merci beaucoup. Thank you very much. Join us again tomorrow, as Kingsley said. And don't forget to watch the repeat broadcast of today's program later today at 5 minutes past 5 on channel 101 Star Time. NTA News 24. From all of us, bye-bye.